And we're going to continue with the 5th chapter of Spell of the Sorcerer's Skull. There was indeed something written on the paper that was left under the St. Anthony statue, although Father Higgins is not sure that it was actually written by anything supernatural. I was listening to the last video, and let me know if you think that my voice for Father Higgins and my voice for Professor Childermass sound a little bit too similar. I'm trying to kind of differentiate between the two, but they are similar guys, so they do sound a little bit alike. Anyway, let's continue. Johnny was crying now. He couldn't help it. The tears flowed freely, and he dabbed at his eyes with his handkerchief. Does that mean you're not going to help me anymore? He sobbed. Of course not, said the priest loudly and firmly. Whatever gave you that idea? I want to find the professor just as much as you do. He paused and rubbed his chin. And then he looked at the scrawling on the paper again. Suddenly he grinned. He laughed aloud, and the sound echoed in the vaulted ceiling of the old church. Johnny took his handkerchief away from his face and blinked. What is it? He asked in a voice that was thick from crying. Oh, nothing much, said the priest, still chuckling. Only I realized all of a sudden that I'd have to be out of my mind to think that Raymond did this. That second sentence there about a great reckoning in a little room, it's from a play by Shakespeare. Old Raymond might be able to read and write, but he sure didn't write this. I ought to have seen that right away. Johnny's heart leaped. He was feeling hopeful again. Does that mean the writing is really from... Professor Higgins cut him off with a shake of his head. No, it doesn't mean anything. Somebody else could have done this for all we know. But I don't think we ought to throw this paper away. No, indeed, we ought to study it and think about it and take it very, very seriously, because you never know. It just might be a miracle from St. Anthony. And if it is, it could help us find the professor. Anyway, we've got to take the help that's given to us. Like they say, beggars can't be choosers. Johnny went home that night thinking that maybe, just maybe, there was some reason to hope. It was possible that St. Anthony or some higher power had spoken, but whoever it was, he or she had not spoken very clearly. Were the bays run together? What could that mean? It seemed to refer to a place, but where? There were lots of bays on the surface of the globe. Johnny knew the names of some of them. Hudson Bay, the Bay of Fundy, Corpus Christi Bay. Was there some place where two bays of water ran into one? He could start combing through an atlas, but it would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. Then Johnny thought some more. He had heard horses referred to as bays. They were horses that were reddish-brown in color. Did the clue mean they should look for some field full of reddish-brown horses? Then there was the other clue, a great reckoning in a little room. The little room had to be the dollhouse room in the Childermass clock. But except for this little glimmer of meaning, the phrase meant absolutely nothing to Johnny. He turned it over and over in his mind, but the more he thought, the more meaningless the phrase became. By the time he got to his front door, Johnny's hopeful mood had evaporated. He remembered the things he had read about the Greek oracles, which had given people mysterious messages just to drive them bats. Maybe the message had been sent by the devil and not by St. Anthony. Maybe they were stuck up against a dead-end wall. The next day was Sunday, and Johnny went to church with his grandma and grandpa as usual. After Mass, everybody filed out of the church. Some went home right away, but others stood around outside and talked with their friends. Grandma and Grandpa got into conversation with Mrs. McGinnis, a silly old lady who was the head of the Catholic Daughters. Johnny couldn't stand Mrs. McGinnis, and so he just stood by, fidgeting nervously and waiting for his grandparents to finish talking. But as he was glancing aimlessly this way and that, Johnny saw Willie Preen elbowing his way through the crowd. Willie was a tall, dopey-looking kid with thick glasses, and he had been one of the altar boys at today's Mass. He was still wearing his long red cassock, and he was grinning from ear to ear. Johnny wondered what he was so pleased about. "Hey, Dixon!" yelled Willie. "Father Higgins wants to see you." Willie chortled. He was bubbling over with malicious amusement. Obviously, Willie thought Johnny was in trouble, and that pleased him to no end. He didn't have anything particular against Johnny. He just liked seeing other kids get bawled out. When they heard what Willie was saying, Grandma and Grandpa both looked upset. Mrs. McGinnis clucked and acted prissy, as she always did when bad things happened to other people. Johnny, however, was calm. He turned and smiled smugly at Willie. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'll be with you in a minute." Then he turned to Grandma and Grandpa. I have to go see Father Higgins about something, he said quickly. It's not very important. It's just about the altar boy schedule. You go ahead. I'll walk home afterward. Before his grandparents had a chance to say anything, Johnny was plunging off into the crowd behind Willie. The expression on Willie's face showed that he was perplexed. Why was Dixon so eager to go and get chewed out? When they got to the door of the sacristy, there was Father Higgins. The iron doors of the big molar walk-in safe were open, and he was putting away the sacred vessels, the chalice, the ciborium, and the gold-plated paten. As the two boys watched, he swung the squealing doors shut and locked them. "Good morning, John," said the priest, turning to face him. His eyes were gleaming, and there was a secretive smile on his face. "How goes it with you today, eh?" Okay, I guess, Father." Johnny's mouth twitched from a nervous smile. Even though the priest was his friend, he often felt nervous around him. Anybody who was in authority gave Johnny the jitters. "Did you want to talk to me about something?" "I did indeed," the priest replied, and his voice sounded ominous. At this, Willie smirked expectantly. Now Dixon was going to get it. But to his great surprise, Willie suddenly found the priest glaring at him. "Well, Mr. Prine," he growled, "I don't think I need you any longer. You had better put out the candles, change your clothes, and go home." Willie's face fell. Yeah, sure, Father. See you later." And with that, he turned and went out, closing the door behind him. Now Johnny and Father Higgins were alone in the sacristy. At first, the priest said nothing. He walked over to the tall walnut dresser where the mass vestments were kept. On top of the dresser was a heavy iron crucifix. Next to it lay a neatly folded road map. As Johnny watched, Father Higgins picked up the map. He held it up so Johnny could see the title on the front. It was a road map of the state of Maine. "I've been doing some thinking about those two little messages that St. Anthony scrawled down for us," he said, tapping the map against the edge of the dresser. "And you know, all of a sudden, late at dinner, it came to me. I should have thought of it before, because I have hundreds and hundreds of folk songs rattling around in my head. Here, hold this." To Johnny's surprise, Father Higgins handed him the map. Then he turned and strode quickly to the coat closet in the far corner of the room. Opening the door, he reached in and pulled out a guitar. Johnny's mouth dropped open. He was completely dumbfounded, and also very amused. So Father Higgins played the guitar. He normally looked so stern and forbidding that, well, it was like finding out that the mayor loved to roller skate. As Johnny watched, the priest put the strap of the guitar around his neck, played a few opening chords, and then launched into a loud, lusty chorus. "Haul down your sails where the bays run together, while away your days in the hills of Illahot." Father Higgins clamped his hand over the strings, and they were silent. "There," he said triumphantly. "That's it. You get it, don't you?" Johnny was still mystified. It was clear that one of the lines they had found was from a song, but Johnny did not have the faintest idea where the hills of Illahot were. Father Higgins looked at Johnny askance, his lips curled into a sarcastic grin. "Oh, come on now. You don't know where Illahot is, do you?" "You really don't know?" Johnny struggled helplessly. "I'm from Long Island, Father. I don't know much about New England." "Is Illahot someplace in Maine? I mean, there are islands along the coast of Maine, aren't there?" Father Higgins laughed. "Is it someplace in Maine? Are there islands along the coast? Is the Pope a Catholic? Holy St. Patrick, you outlanders don't know anything about New England, do you?" Johnny felt sheepish.